Whether or not and how much young adults should use social media has been a controversial topic since the rise of platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and X. Unlike previous generations, most Americans under age 35 have never known a world without these apps. While today's kids grow up immersed in the digital world, some argue that their access to these platforms should be more tightly controlled. And now governments have started to take action. In fact, one country just passed a landmark law restricting children's social media use.
Australia just recently passed into law a bill that would essentially ban people under 16 from engaging with social media of various kinds. There's no carve-out. You can't get a note from a parent or something like that. There's no way for people under 16 in Australia to legally access social media. And social media companies are required by law now to sort of police their platforms to prevent children from getting on.
That's David Insera, Fellow for Free Expression and Technology at the Cato Institute. The law, which is planned to take effect this year, will force tech giants like TikTok and Meta to implement restrictions designed to keep minors off their platforms. Insera says failure to do so could result in fines totaling tens of millions of dollars a year. According to a poll by the Australian Broadcasting Company, 60% of Australians supported the ban before it became law. What were their concerns? Julie Scelfo, founder and executive director of Mothers Against Media Addiction, says unrestricted social media access is affecting the mental health of young adults.
The rise of constant access to smartphones, social media, and the internet is causing the mental health crisis in children and adolescents. In the United States, for example, we have been in what the American Academy of Pediatrics calls a national emergency in youth mental health since 2021. What's happening on social media is that the way the algorithms have been written is to amplify the most extreme, the most possible harmful content to children. And kids are seeing things that no child should be exposed to, like violence, self-harm, unrealistic beauty standards. And they're seeing it in such quantity and frequency that it's actually replacing healthier experiences that they would be having if they were socializing in person with other friends.
In the U.S., there's been an alarming rise of depression, anxiety, and other mental health disorders among young adults. According to Yale School of Medicine, suicide deaths among 10 to 24-year-olds have risen 62% from 2007 to 2021. Researchers point to several different factors for this rise, including the COVID pandemic, substance abuse, and bullying. But they're also raising alarm bells about the potential mental health effects of social media. In 2023, the American Psychological Association issued a health advisory on social media use in adolescents. Scelfo shares similar concerns and says these apps are fueling an addiction to screens that may have long-lasting effects.
We are seeing that teenagers today are spending as much as 9 hours a day on a screen. I mean, think about that. 9 hours a day all week is more than a full-time job. So all of that time that they're experiencing life through screens, that is displaced time that they would have been experiencing life through interpersonal interactions. So what's happening is kids are not getting the building blocks they need to learn how to relate to other people, to learn how to conduct themselves. And we're hearing even from employers, for example, that the young generation doesn't have basic skills like looking people in the eye and learning how to de-escalate a conflict.
Despite the downsides, it's important to recognize that social media is not all bad for every teenager. For kids with family living far away or friends at different schools, these platforms provide an easy way to stay connected. Social media can also be a vital source of support as many young LGBTQ individuals look for support. While there are pros and cons to adolescent social media use, Insera believes that restricting these apps should be a parent's decision, not the government's.
If you're a parent who wants to empower your kid to responsibly use some element of social media, you don't have a choice anymore. So we've simply removed that choice from parents and just said the state will govern your child in this area, which I think is a bad approach. And it will, while there certainly are harms out there, we're throwing out the potential benefits that can also occur to people who want to try to use social media responsibly with their children. And that should be up to every individual parent to decide how they want to do that. That choice is now gone.
Scelfo, however, disagrees with the idea that parents are able to protect their kids from potential harm. A mom of three, she says that even the most proactive parents can't control for everything on social media. She argues that legislators need to step in and regulate these platforms the same way they regulate addictive substances like alcohol and tobacco.
Big tech is using the exact same playbook that was used by big tobacco. And once we realized how bad cigarettes were, big tobacco said, oh, it's not our job to make sure people are healthy. That's up to individuals to do. There is no way a parent can be responsible for monitoring absolutely everything their child sees online. And just like an individual parent can't make sure the roads are safe or can't make sure the food supply is safe, we need solutions that are built in and help make sure the entire system has safeguards for children.
Many parents agree with Scelfo that more guardrails are needed, but what might they look like? Once the Australian ban takes effect, Sincera says it's likely all social media users will have to provide some form of government ID to prove their age. Although companies are promising to keep this data safe and secure, it's possible personal information could get into the wrong hands. Sincera also warns that these age verification measures could restrict free speech, which affects both kids and adults.
Even adults who are engaging in anonymous speech online, those users' speech, that anonymous speech, might no longer be anonymous if the information gets hacked, if there's something goes wrong on the cybersecurity side. And so every bit of anonymous speech that we care about, whether it be whistleblowers, whether it be dissidents, whether it be just minority groups that want to speak up on a difficult issue in one way or another, all of that speech, which is easier when it's anonymous, all that speech is now potentially something that could be outed if something goes wrong on the data systems of the companies. That's a pretty big problem for speech, and it affects all adults, not just the kids who are just excluded from the platforms entirely.
Scelfo says potential security concerns are worth the risk if it means protecting more young adults.
Some of the social media companies said, oh, we don't want to collect that data. It's a privacy issue. Well, guess what? When their internal documents were revealed, it showed that they already know their algorithms are so sophisticated that they can tell when a child lies and says they're 13, but they're actually 11. And they even collected data on how often our 11-year-olds or 12-year-olds were so addicted to Instagram that they were up at 1 a.m., 2 a.m. on school nights because they couldn't put it away. So yes, there is some sacrifice of privacy if we age gate certain products, but I think it's a small price to pay for ensuring that our children are kept safe and putting an end to the national emergency in youth mental health.
Australia is not the only country to consider legislation around youth and social media. In July of last year, the United States Senate passed the Kids Online Safety Act with bipartisan support. The bill lays out guidelines to shield children from harmful material online and requires platforms to disable addicting features like infinite scrolling and personalized content feeds for minors. With Australia's social media ban for youth taking effect soon, many are wondering if the U.S. will follow suit with similar legislation. To find out more about Julie Scelfo, David and Sarah, and all our featured guests, visit viewpointsradio.org. For more behind the scenes, check out Viewpoints Radio on X, Facebook, and Instagram. This segment was written and produced by Grace Galante. Our lead producer is Libby Foster. Our executive producer is Amira Zaveri. Studio production by Jason Dickey. I'm Gary Price.